Major Lim Yujin was monitoring the outer defense grid when her worst nightmare became reality. The sensors near Pluto detected something impossible, a massive ship dropping out of hyperspace only a few million kilometers from the dwarf planet. The vessel was unlike anything in Earth's databases, but it matched perfectly with the descriptions from the alien distress Call-A Devourer scout ship had found them. The alien vessel was roughly pyramid-shaped, but with curves that seemed to bend, space around them. Dark energy fields rippled along its hull and strange geometric patterns pulsed with light that hurt to look at directly. The ship was only a few kilometers long, but the sensor readings indicated it packed more firepower than Earth's entire battle fleet. Major Lim activated the emergency alert system and watched as every human military installation in the solar system went to maximum readiness. Red lights flashed on command consoles from Mercury to the Kuiper Belt. The moment everyone had been preparing for had finally arrived, but they were not ready yet. The Prometheus weapons needed another 6 hours to complete their charging sequence. The exotic matter had to be precisely calibrated, and the targeting computers required final adjustments. Dr. Choi had warned that firing the weapons prematurely could cause them to malfunction, or worse, create uncontrolled space-time distortions that could destroy Earth Admiral Park. Ji-Wan watched the Devourer scout from Terra. Command and knew they were facing an impossible situation. If the scout ship was allowed to scan Earth's defenses and report back to the main fleet, Operation Final Engine would fail. The enemy would adapt their approach and probably arrive with overwhelming force, but engaging the scout ship would reveal humanity's military capabilities and potentially trigger an immediate invasion. The Devourer's main fleet was still 8 months away, according to the latest intelligence. If the scout could be destroyed quietly without sending a warning signal, Earth might still have time to complete the weapon preparations. Captain Wu Minjae received orders to intercept the scout ship using the experimental stealth cruiser Soul's Honor. The ship had been designed to be invisible to most forms of detection, but no one knew if it could hide from Devourer sensors. The mission was essentially suicide, but it was their only hope. The Soul's Honor approached the alien scout carefully, using passive sensors to avoid detection. Captain Wu could see the enemy vessel on his main screen and felt his blood freeze. The ship's surface seemed to be alive with strange patterns of light and movement. It looked more like a living organism than a machine long. Range scans revealed that the Devourer scout was conducting detailed analysis of Earth's electromagnetic signatures. It was mapping the planet's radio transmissions, satellite networks, and energy production facilities. The alien computers were building a complete picture of human civilization and its technological capabilities. Captain Wu realized they had minutes, not hours, before the scout completed its survey and transmitted the data back to the main Devourer fleet. He ordered his weapons officer to prepare their most powerful torpedo and hoped it would be enough to destroy the alien ship before it could send a warning. But the Devourers were not caught off guard. The moment Soul's Honor powered up its weapons, the alien scout ship reacted. With impossible speed, its hull blazed with energy and space around it began to twist and bend. The scout had detected the human ship, despite all their stealth technology. The alien vessel fired some kind of exotic energy beam that passed right through Soul's Honor's shields and armor. The beam did not explode or burn. Instead, it seemed to unravel the molecular bonds holding the ship together. Captain Wu watched his vessel dissolve around him as the crew were reduced to their component atoms. Captain Wu had managed to fire his torpedo before the ship was destroyed. The nuclear warhead struck the Devourer scout's hull and exploded with the force of a small sun. The alien vessel staggered under the impact, and its energy fields flickered, but it remained intact and fully operational. The scout ship began transmitting a complex signal toward deep space using some form of faster-than-light communication. The message would reach the Devourer main fleet in a matter of hours, informing Them that Earth possessed nuclear weapons and military spacecraft, but nothing that could threaten their advanced technology. Dr. Choi received the devastating news while she was calibrating the Prometheus weapons. The enemy now knew exactly where Earth was located and had analyzed their defensive capabilities. The element of surprise was completely gone, and the Devourers would arrive prepared for anything humanity could throw at them. Admiral Park called an emergency meeting with all senior commanders. The original plan for Operation Final Engine was no longer viable. The Devourers would expect an attack and would probably modify their approach to counter human weapons. They needed a completely new strategy, and they needed it within hours. General Kim Hyun-woo proposed the most desperate plan in military history. Instead of waiting for the Devourers to come to Earth, humanity should fire the Prometheus weapons, immediately sending them through hyperspace to intercept the enemy fleet at their current location. The weapons would travel blind, using 8-year-old coordinates and hoping their calculations were correct. The risks were enormous. The Prometheus weapons had never been tested at maximum range, and firing them through hyperspace added variables that no one fully understood. If the weapons missed their target or malfunctioned during transport, Earth would be defenseless when the Devourers arrived. But Dr. Choi ran the calculations and realized it might work. The alien distress call had included precise star charts showing the Devourers' movement patterns. The enemy fleet followed predictable routes between star systems and moved at constant speed. Human computers could calculate their exact location with reasonable accuracy. Commander Kang Sulgi provided the final piece of information needed to make the plan work. Her intelligence team had been monitoring Devourer communications and had detected a pattern. The main fleet always paused for several days when they received reports from scout ships. This would give the Prometheus weapons time to reach their target before the enemy could change course. The decision was made in less than an hour. Operation Final Engine would commence immediately, with all 12 weapons firing at maximum power toward the Devourer's calculated position. The weapons would emerge from hyperspace in a perfect sphere around the enemy fleet and detonate simultaneously. Dr. Choi began the firing sequence, while Admiral Park coordinated with all human military forces. The conventional fleet would remain in Earth orbit, ready to engage any Devourers that survived the initial attack. The defense platforms would activate the moment any alien ships appeared in the Solar System. Captain Nam Junho and his crew aboard Incheon Strike prepared to monitor the weapon's progress through hyperspace using experimental tracking systems. If the Prometheus devices malfunctioned or went off course, there might be a few minutes warning before the Devourers arrived at Earth. The first Prometheus weapon fired with a flash of light that was visible from Mars. The exotic matter payload disappeared into hyperspace, carrying enough destructive force to crack a moon. 11. More weapons fired in rapid succession, each one targeting a specific point in the Devourer's formation. President Yoon Jae-hyun addressed the people of Earth as the weapons traveled through hyperspace toward their target. He spoke calmly about humanity's chances and what would happen if the attack failed. The evacuation of Earth's major cities continued as families prepared for the possibility of planetary bombardment. The weapons would reach their target in 18 hours, during which time Earth's entire population could only wait and hope. The Prometheus devices were traveling faster than any human message, so there would be no warning if something went wrong. The first sign of success or failure would be the arrival or absence of the Devourer. Fleet Commander Kang Sulgi monitored alien communications from her position aboard Busan's Revenge. She detected increased activity from the Devourer main fleet as they processed the scout ship's report. The enemy was accelerating toward Earth, faster than expected, which meant the weapons had even less margin for error as the hours passed. Tension built throughout the solar system. Every human being alive knew that their species' fate was traveling through hyperspace in the form of 12 weapons that might save them all or might miss their target entirely. The next day would determine whether humanity joined the ranks of galactic predators or became just another extinct civilization consumed by the Devourers. 8 years had passed since the discovery of the alien distress call, and Earth had transformed into something unrecognizable. The peaceful blue planet that Captain Lee Min-soo remembered was now covered with massive industrial complexes and military installations. Every nation had contributed their best scientists, engineers, and soldiers to Operation Final Engine. Dr. Choi Yuna stood in the command center of Titan Station, watching thousands of technicians work on the Prometheus engines, the 12. Weapons were spread across the solar system, hidden inside asteroids and small moons where enemy sensors would never detect them. Each engine was the size of a city block and contained enough exotic matter to reshape local space-time. The past 8 years had been a race against time. While the Devourers continued their slow advance toward Earth, long-range scouts reported that 3 more alien civilizations had fallen to the enemy. Their standard pattern never changed. Arrive at a populated system, study the defenses for a few months, then begin the systematic consumption of every living thing. Lieutenant Colonel Jin Min-hyuk commanded the deep space reconnaissance mission that had been tracking the Devourers for the past 4 years. His ships used experimental jump drives that could leap across dozens of light years in seconds. The technology was dangerous and unreliable, but it was the only way to keep pace with an enemy that moved faster than light. The intelligence Jin gathered was both useful and terrifying. The Devourers operated in a specific formation with their command ships protected by layers of smaller vessels. The entire fleet moved like a single organism with perfect coordination between individual ships. They had obviously been doing this for thousands of years and had refined their tactics to near perfection, but Jin had also discovered something that might be a weakness. The Devourers seemed unable to adapt quickly to completely new forms of attack. They relied on their vast database of previous encounters to counter enemy weapons. If humanity could hit them with something they had never seen before, there might be a brief window of opportunity. Engineer Song Yoon-ji worked with Dr. Choi to modify the Prometheus weapons for maximum effectiveness against the Devourers. The original design had been intended to destroy planets or asteroid bases, but their enemy was a mobile fleet that could change formation at will. The weapons needed to be precisely timed to catch the entire enemy force simultaneously. The solution was elegant and terrifying. Instead of firing all 12 weapons at once, they would stagger the detonations to create overlapping fields of destruction. The first weapons would disable the Devourers' shields and communication systems. The remaining weapons would finish the job by collapsing the space around the enemy fleet into a quantum singularity. Captain Nam Junho commanded the new starship Incheon Strike, which had been designed specifically to deliver Prometheus payloads. His vessel looked nothing like traditional human spacecraft. It was built for pure speed and stealth with experimental armor that could bend light around the ship, making it nearly invisible, sir. Incheon Strike and her sister ships would carry the weapons to their target coordinates, then retreat to minimum safe distance before detonation. The margin for error was essentially 0. If the ships were caught too close to the weapons when they fired, the crews would be vaporized along with the Devourers. Training for Operation Final Engine had pushed human technology and endurance to their absolute limits. Captain Nam's crew practiced the attack sequence thousands of times using holographic simulations of the Devourers' formation. Every movement had to be perfect, because they would only get one chance to position the weapons correctly. Meanwhile, other branches of Earth's military prepared for different scenarios. Major Lim Yujin commanded the Outer System Defense Grid, which consisted of automated weapons platforms hidden throughout the asteroid belt. If any Devourers survived the Prometheus attack, these platforms would provide the second line of defense. The defense platforms used conventional weapons, but at a scale never before attempted. Each platform could fire projectiles at significant fractions of light speed using magnetic acceleration systems powered by fusion reactors. The platforms were designed to operate independently. Even if all communication with Earth was severed, Colonel Sim Tae-young oversaw the construction of ground-based quantum artillery on Earth itself. These weapons could not match the range or power of the Prometheus engines, but they could create localized distortions in space-time that would disrupt enemy ships attempting to land on Earth. The quantum artillery represented humanity's last line of defense. If the Devourers somehow survived both the space-based weapons and the orbital platforms, Earth itself would become a fortress bristling with exotic weapons. The planet's population had been evacuated to underground cities that could survive even if the surface was completely destroyed. Captain Woo Min-jae led the conventional fleet that would serve as a diversion during the main attack. His ships were fast and heavily armed, but everyone knew they were essentially suicide missions. Their job was to draw the Devourers' attention away from the real threat while the Prometheus weapons moved into position. The conventional fleet had been equipped with every weapon humanity could devise: antimatter torpedoes that could crack asteroids in half, particle beam cannons that could melt through any known material, kinetic kill vehicles that, struck with the force of nuclear explosions, none of these weapons would seriously damage the Devourers, but they might buy precious seconds for the real attack commander. Kang Seol-gi operated from the intelligence ship Busan's Revenge monitoring enemy communications and movement patterns. Her team had spent years learning to decode Devourer transmissions. The alien language was complex and seemed to change constantly, but patterns were beginning to emerge. The intelligence indicated that the Devourers were aware something unusual was happening in Earth's sector of space. Their scouts had detected the massive military buildup and increased industrial activity. The enemy was approaching more cautiously than usual, which meant humanity's window of surprise was closing rapidly. Dr. Choi reviewed the final calculations for the Prometheus weapons and felt satisfied that they had done everything humanly possible. The weapons would create a sphere of destruction approximately 1 light year in diameter. Everything within that sphere would be broken down into component particles and scattered across the cosmic background radiation. The timing had to be perfect because the Devourers would detect the weapons the moment they emerged. From hyperspace, the alien fleet would have approximately 30 seconds to react before the first detonations began. That was why the attack required 12 weapons firing in perfect sequence to prevent any possibility of escape. Admiral Park Jae-won coordinated the entire operation from Terra Command, watching as reports flowed in from across the solar system. Every ship, every weapon, every soldier was ready for the moment when humanity would either save itself or die trying. The countdown to Operation Final Engine had reached its final phase. President Yoon Jae-hyun addressed the people of Earth in what might be humanity's last broadcast before the attack. He spoke simply and honestly about what they faced and what they were about to do. The Devourers had consumed countless civilizations across the galaxy, but they had never faced anything like humanity. The message was transmitted to every human settlement in the solar system, and beyond. Earth's colonies would continue even if the homeworld fell. But everyone understood that this battle would determine whether humanity became the galaxy's dominant species or just another footnote in the Devourers' long history of conquest. As the final preparations were completed, Dr. Choi stood in the Prometheus Command Center and activated the weapons systems across the solar system. 12 engines that had taken 8 years to build hummed to life with power that could reshape reality itself. The moment of truth was approaching, and humanity was ready to show the galaxy what happened when someone threatened their home. Admiral Park Ji-won had not slept in 36 hours, but sleep was a luxury she could not afford right now. The briefing room at Terra Command was filled with the most powerful people on Earth, and they were all looking at her for answers she did not have yet. The alien message from Captain Lee Min-soo had changed everything, and now humanity faced the biggest decision in its history. General Kim Hyun-woo sat across from her, studying the holographic display of the Devourers' fleet movements. His weathered face showed no emotion, but Admiral Park could see the calculations running behind his eyes. He was already thinking about how to fight an enemy that had destroyed civilizations far more advanced than Earth. Dr. Choi Yuna stood near the back of the room, her hands shaking slightly as she reviewed the technical data about devourer weapons. She was Earth's leading expert on theoretical physics and exotic matter research. If anyone could find a weakness in the alien technology, it would be her. But even she looked overwhelmed by what they were facing. President Yoon Jae-hyun entered the room and everyone stood at attention. He looked older than his 50 years, and the weight of leadership seemed to press down on his shoulders. Like a physical force, he had been elected to manage Earth's economy and colonies, not to fight a war against galaxy-consuming monsters. The holographic display showed the path of destruction. The Devourers had carved through space over the past 1,000 years, dozens of star systems reduced to empty darkness, billions of lives extinguished without a trace. It was like watching a disease spread through the galaxy, consuming everything in its path. Admiral Park began the briefing by explaining what they knew about the Devourers based on the alien data. The enemy fleet consisted of hundreds of massive ships, each one capable of destroying a planet. The creatures inside were part machine, part biological horror, and completely dedicated to consumption. And Growth Dr. Choi stepped forward and activated a new section of the holographic display showing Devourer technology in detail. Their ships used some kind of exotic matter drive that allowed them to travel faster than light their weapons could, crack planets in half, and their shields could deflect any known form of energy. But the most frightening thing about the Devourers was their intelligence. They did not just attack randomly, they studied each new civilization carefully, learning about their technology, culture, and military capabilities. Then they would design specific strategies to overcome any resistance in the most efficient way possible. General Kim spoke up for the first time, asking the question everyone was thinking: how long do we have before they reach Earth? Admiral Park consulted her calculations and gave them the answer that had been keeping her awake: 12 years, maybe less, if they accelerate after destroying other civilizations along the way. The room fell silent. As everyone processed this information, 12 years seemed like a long time, but it was nothing compared to the scale of preparation needed to fight. The Devourers, Earth's entire military, would need to be rebuilt from scratch using technology that did not exist. Yet, President Yoon asked about their options, and Admiral Park laid out the 3 possibilities they had discussed: run and hide, hoping to escape the Devourers' notice; stay and fight, using conventional weapons, and almost certainly lose, or try something completely different, something that had never been attempted before. Dr. Choi cleared her throat and everyone turned to look at her. She had been working on classified research projects for the past decade, hidden away in the deep laboratories of Titan Station. Most of the people in this room did not even know what she had been building out there in the cold darkness beyond Saturn. She activated a new holographic display showing schematics for something called the Prometheus project. It looked like a massive engine or cannon, but the technical specifications made no sense to most of the military officers in the room. This was technology that pushed the boundaries of physics itself. Dr. Choi explained that the Prometheus engines were designed as a last resort weapon for humanity. Something to use if Earth ever faced extinction from an enemy too powerful to fight conventionally. She had been working on the project for 15 years, ever since deep space sensors detected suspicious signals from the galactic core. The engines worked by manipulating the quantum foam that existed in empty space. They could create weapons that traveled faster than light and carried enough destructive force to collapse entire solar systems. But they had never been tested, and the risks were enormous. A mistake could destroy Earth just as easily as it could destroy the Devourers. Captain Bae Sumin, commander of the experimental starship. Seoul's Pride argued that they should use the Prometheus engines immediately, strike the Devourers while they were still far from Earth before they could adapt to humanity's technology. The alien data included their current location and movement patterns, giving Earth a perfect opportunity for a surprise attack. But Commander Oh Seung-ho, who represented the outer colonies, worried about the consequences. Using weapons that could destroy star systems might attract the attention of other hostile civilizations. Earth could win against the Devourers, only to face an even worse enemy drawn by the display of destructive power. Major Han Ji-soo, fresh from combat operations on Mars, reminded everyone that humanity had always survived by being more ruthless than their enemies when survival was at stake. The Devourers had destroyed countless civilizations by being the most dangerous predator in the galaxy. Now it was time for them to meet something even more dangerous. The debate continued for hours, with military leaders, scientists, and politicians arguing about the best course of action. Some wanted to evacuate Earth's population to distant colonies. Others proposed building massive defensive systems around the solar system. A few suggested trying to negotiate with the Devourers. Though no one believed that was possible, Dr. Choi provided more details about the Prometheus project. She had built 12 engines hidden throughout the solar system, each one capable of accelerating a specially designed payload to near light speed. The weapons themselves were not conventional explosives, but devices that could destabilize reality itself in a localized area. The payloads contained exotic matter that would interact with the quantum vacuum when detonated. The result would be a expanding bubble of destruction that broke down matter at the subatomic level, turning everything within a certain radius into fundamental particles. This was not just a weapon, it was a way to delete sections of space-time itself, General Kim asked. About the range and accuracy of the Prometheus weapons, Dr. Choi admitted that they had never been tested at full power. The computer simulations suggested they could hit targets anywhere within 50 light-years with perfect accuracy, but simulations were not the same as reality, and there would be no second chance if the first attack failed. President Yoon called for a vote on whether to authorize the Prometheus project. The decision would commit humanity to a path of total war against the Devourers. There would be no going back once the weapons were fired. Earth would become either the galaxy's newest apex predator or another empty system consumed by an unstoppable enemy. The vote was unanimous. Earth would not go quietly into extinction. The Prometheus engines would be activated and humanity would strike first before the Devourers could reach the solar system. Operation Final Engine was authorized with Dr. Choi in charge of technical preparation and Admiral Park coordinating the largest military mobilization in human history. As the meeting ended, Admiral Park looked around the room at the faces of Earth's leaders. They had just committed their species to a war that would determine the fate of the galaxy. She hoped they were making the right choice. But there was no way to know until the weapons fired and the universe itself became humanity's battlefield. Captain Lee Min-soo was having the worst night of his career, and he did not even know it yet. The coffee in his metal cup had gone cold hours ago, but he kept drinking it anyway, because staying awake was more important than taste. His shift at the Europa Deep Space Station was supposed to end in 20 minutes, and then he could finally sleep for 8 straight hours. The monitoring equipment around him hummed quietly in the darkness of space. Captain Lee had been watching the same empty screens. For 6 months now, nothing ever happened out here in the cold darkness between Jupiter and Saturn. The most exciting thing he had seen all year was a small asteroid that passed too close to their sensors and made the alarms beep for 30 seconds. Then, everything changed. The main console started flashing red and blue lights like a carnival ride gone crazy. Captain Lee dropped his coffee cup and watched it float away in the zero gravity. His hands moved quickly over the controls, trying to figure out what was happening. The computer screens filled with numbers and symbols he had never seen before. The first thing he noticed was that the signal was coming from very far away, much farther than anything humans had ever detected before. The second thing he noticed was that it was not natural. This was not some star exploding or black hole spinning. This was a message from someone or something that knew how to use technology. Captain Lee pressed the translation button and waited. The computer worked for several minutes, processing the alien language and trying to turn it into words that humans could understand. When the translation finally appeared on his screen, Captain Lee felt his heart stop beating for a moment. The message was a cry for help. "Help us, please help us. Our worlds are burning. They come from the darkness between stars, and they eat everything. They eat our cities, our people, our planets. Nothing can stop them. We are the Kalani people of the Vega system, and we are dying. Captain." Lee read the message 3 times to make sure he was not dreaming or hallucinating from too much coffee. This was real contact with aliens, and they were in terrible trouble. He looked at the timestamp on the message and felt sick. The signal had been traveling through space for over 300 years. The aliens who sent it were probably already dead, but there was more information in the signal. Much more. The aliens had included star maps showing where they lived and where their attackers had come from. They called the enemy the Devourers. And from the data included in the message, these creatures were like nothing the galaxy had ever seen before. The Devourers traveled from system to system in massive ships the size of small moons. They would arrive at a populated world and begin the process of complete consumption. Every living thing, every building, every scrap of metal would be broken down and absorbed. The aliens had tried to fight back, but their weapons were useless against. Technology so advanced it seemed like magic. Captain Lee studied the tactical information included in the alien message and felt his blood turn to ice. The Devourers were not just destroying the Kalani people, they were moving in a straight line, through space, consuming every civilization they encountered, and according to the star charts, their path would eventually bring them to Earth. The captain calculated the numbers 3 times, hoping he was wrong. Each time he got the same answer. The Devourers were moving toward human space at a steady speed. They had probably finished destroying the Kalani system centuries ago and were now working their way through other civilizations. If they maintained their current pace, they would reach Earth in approximately 12 years. Captain Lee activated the emergency communication system and sent a priority message directly to Admiral Park Ji-won at Terra Command on Earth. He attached all the alien data and his own calculations, then sat back in his chair and tried not to think about what this meant for humanity. The response came back in less than 4 hours, which was incredibly fast for a message traveling from Europa to Earth. Admiral Park had read everything and was ordering an immediate classified briefing with Earth's top military leaders. Captain Lee was instructed to say nothing about the alien message to anyone until further orders. While he waited for the transport ship to take him back to Earth, Captain Lee continued studying the alien data. The more he learned about the Devourers, the more frightened he became. These creatures had been traveling through the galaxy for thousands of years, leaving nothing but empty space behind them. They were like a plague that consumed entire civilizations and grew stronger with each victory. The alien message included images of the Devourers, captured by long-range sensors before the Kalani homeworld fell. The creatures looked like a combination of machine and living tissue, but much larger than anything humans had ever built. Their ships were black and angular with strange energy fields surrounding them. They moved through space like predators hunting prey. Captain Lee found technical specifications for Devourer, weapons, and defensive systems. The aliens had tried everything against them. Nuclear weapons had no effect. Energy beams were absorbed and redirected. Kinetic projectiles were stopped by shields that bent space itself around the enemy ships. Even biological weapons designed to target their organic components had failed completely. But the most disturbing information was about Devourer intelligence. These were not mindless eating machines. They were smart, calculating, and strategic. They would study each new civilization before attacking, learning about their technology and defensive capabilities. Then they would adapt their approach to overcome any resistance in the most efficient way possible. The transport ship arrived, and Captain Lee prepared to leave Europa Station. He took one last look at the alien message still displayed on his screen and wondered if humanity would fare any better than the Kalani people. Humans were clever and resourceful, but they had never faced anything. Like the Devourers, during the 3-day journey back to Earth, Captain Lee could not sleep or eat properly. He kept thinking about the 12-year deadline and wondering if it was enough time for humanity to prepare. The aliens had fought for decades against the Devourers and still lost. What chance did Earth have against such a terrible enemy? When the transport ship finally reached Earth orbit, Captain Lee could see the blue and green planet rotating slowly below him. It looked so peaceful and beautiful from space. It was hard to believe that somewhere in the darkness between stars, a force of destruction was moving steadily toward this world. Captain Lee gathered his data files and prepared to meet with Admiral Park and the other military leaders. He knew that the next few hours would change everything for humanity. The age of isolation was over. Earth now knew it was not alone in the universe, and that knowledge came with a terrible price. The alien distress call had been answered, 300 years too late to save the Kalani people. But it might be just in time to save humanity if they were smart enough and strong enough and ruthless enough to do what needed to be done. Captain Lee stepped off the transport ship onto Terra Command Station and walked toward the briefing room where Earth's leaders were waiting. He carried with him the most important message in human history, and the countdown to humanity's greatest test had already begun. Dr. Choi Yuna had not slept or eaten in 24 hours, but her eyes never left the monitoring screens that tracked the Prometheus weapons through hyperspace. The 12 devices were traveling faster than light toward the Devourer's main fleet, carrying humanity's only hope for survival. Each weapon contained enough exotic matter to destabilize reality itself in a sphere several light-years across. The weapons had been in hyperspace for 17 hours and 53 minutes. In 7 minutes, they would emerge around the Devourer's fleet and either save Earth or reveal that humanity had fired their most powerful weapons at empty space. The calculations had been checked thousands of times, but there was always the possibility that something had gone wrong. Admiral Park Ji-won stood beside Dr. Choi in the command center, watching as data flowed in from deep space monitoring stations across the solar system. Every piece of equipment capable of detecting faster than light phenomena was focused on the target coordinates where the Devourers should be waiting. The next few minutes would determine the fate of human civilization. Captain Nam Junho monitored the weapons signatures from aboard Incheon Strike, his experimental tracking equipment showing 12 bright dots racing through hyperspace toward their destination. The Prometheus devices were maintaining perfect formation and showed no signs of malfunction. Everything was proceeding exactly as planned. Commander Kang Sulgi detected a burst of alien communications from the target area, indicating that the Devourer's main fleet was indeed at the predicted coordinates. The enemy had paused their advance toward Earth and was analyzing the data from their scout ship exactly as human intelligence had predicted. The moment of truth arrived with surprising quietness. The weapons emerged from hyperspace around the Devourer's fleet, and for approximately 30 seconds, both sides had time to register what was happening. Long-range sensors detected the alien ships beginning evasive maneuvers as their computers identified the incoming threat. Then the first Prometheus weapon detonated. The explosion was visible across half the galaxy as a sphere of pure destruction expanded at the speed of light. Everything within the initial blast radius simply ceased to exist, broken down into fundamental particles and scattered across space-time. The exotic matter in the weapon created a cascade effect that destabilized the quantum foam itself. The second weapon fired 3 seconds later, followed by the third and fourth in rapid succession. Each detonation created overlapping fields of destruction that prevented any possibility of escape. The Devourers tried to activate their defensive systems, but their shields were designed to stop conventional attacks, not weapons that unraveled the basic structure of reality. Admiral Park watched the sensor readings with amazement and horror as 12 weapons redesigned the local space-time continuum. The area where the Devourer's fleet had been was now a rapidly expanding sphere of exotic radiation and quantum distortions that would be visible to astronomers for the next million years. But the victory celebration lasted only minutes before long-range sensors detected something that made everyone's blood freeze with terror. The destruction of the Devourer's main fleet had been detected by other enemy forces scattered across the galaxy, and they were all changing course toward Earth. Captain Lee Do-hyun, commanding the Deep Space Observatory Network, reported at least 6 separate Devourer fleets converging on humanity's location. The signals were coming from different directions and different distances, but all of them were accelerating toward Earth at maximum speed. The Prometheus attack had succeeded beyond all expectations, eliminating the Devourer's primary battle group so completely that no trace remained. But the weapons had also revealed Earth's location to every hostile force within 100 light years. Humanity had won the battle but started a much larger war. Dr. Choi studied the incoming sensor data and realized the full scope of what they faced. Each of the approaching Devourer fleets was roughly the same size as the one they had just destroyed. The enemy operated as a distributed network with multiple battle groups spread across the galaxy. When one group was threatened, the others would converge to eliminate. The threat general Kim Hyun-woo calculated the timing of the new threat and delivered the devastating news to Admiral Park. The closest Devourer fleet would reach Earth in approximately 8 months. The others would arrive over the following 2 years. Earth was about to face not one invasion, but a series of increasingly powerful attacks. The Prometheus weapons had expended their exotic matter reserves and would require months to recharge. Even if Dr. Choi could accelerate the process, they would only have 3 or 4 weapons ready when the first enemy reinforcements arrived. It would not be enough to stop a fleet that knew what to expect. Captain Woo Min-jae proposed a radical strategy instead of waiting for the Devourers to come to Earth. Humanity should take the offensive, strike the enemy fleets while they were still scattered and before they could coordinate their attacks. Use the remaining Prometheus weapons as humanity's primary weapon in a galaxy-wide campaign. The proposal was audacious and terrifying. It would require Earth to transform from a single-planet civilization into a galactic military power within months. Every human resource would need to be dedicated to building ships' weapons and the infrastructure needed to support operations across dozens of star systems, but Admiral Park realized it might be their only chance for survival. The Devourers had spent thousands of years as the galaxy's apex predator, consuming any civilization that posed a threat. Now, humanity had proven they could destroy even the most advanced enemy forces. The question was whether they could do it consistently across multiple battles. Dr. Choi began planning the next generation of weapons systems, devices that could be mass-produced and deployed on conventional starships. The Prometheus engines were too large and complex for mobile warfare, but their underlying principles could be adapted for smaller, more flexible weapons. Engineer Song Yoon-ji worked with military contractors across Earth to design new classes of warships built around exotic matter weapons. These vessels would be smaller and faster than traditional battleships, but capable of destroying enemy fleets many times their size. The key was hitting hard and retreating before the Devourers could adapt. Commander Kang Sul-gi analyzed the intelligence gathered from the destroyed Devourer fleet and made a disturbing discovery. The enemy had been communicating with forces outside the galaxy before their destruction. Humanity's victory had attracted attention from threats even more dangerous than the Devourers. The implications were staggering. Earth had revealed itself to an entire universe of hostile civilizations by demonstrating the ability to destroy fleets that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. Other predator species would now view humanity as either a potential ally or a threat that needed to be eliminated. President Yoon Jae-hyun addressed the United Nations and the colonial governments, explaining that Earth was now committed to a path of galactic expansion, whether they wanted it or not. The alternative was extinction, as every hostile force in the local cluster converged on their location. The military mobilization that followed was unprecedented in human history. Every nation contributed their best technology and personnel to building the fleet that would carry humanity to the stars. Factories on Earth, Mars, and the asteroid colonies worked around the clock, producing ships and weapons for the coming campaign. Captain Nam Junho was promoted to admiral and given command of the 1st Expeditionary Fleet, which would carry the war directly to the Devourer's scattered forces his ships were equipped with. Miniaturized versions of the Prometheus weapons capable of destroying enemy vessels, but not entire star systems. The strategy was simple but dangerous. Strike fast, eliminate enemy fleets before they could coordinate and establish humanity as the dominant military power in the local galaxy. It was exactly the same approach. The Devourers had used for thousands of years, but humanity would do it better and more ruthlessly. Admiral Park watched the 1st Expeditionary Fleet depart Earth orbit and wondered if they were making the right choice. The alternative was to wait for extinction, but the path they had chosen would transform humanity into something completely different. They would become the galaxy's new apex predator or die trying. The alien distress call that had started everything was finally being answered, not with rescue, but with the complete transformation of human civilization. Earth had heard the cry for help from across the void and responded by becoming the force that would ensure no species would ever face extinction alone again. But the price of that transformation would be paid in the blood of every civilization that dared to threaten humanity's expansion across the stars. The galaxy was about to learn that Earth did not produce victims. It produced survivors who would burn entire star systems to protect their own. 20 years had passed since the first Prometheus weapon fired, and the galaxy would never be the same again. Admiral Nam Junho stood on the bridge of the massive battleship Terra's Wrath, watching as his fleet emerged from hyperspace around what had once been the Devourer's primary shipyard. The alien construction facility had been built inside a hollow moon, but now it was nothing but expanding debris and exotic radiation. The war against the Devourers had lasted 12 years and ended with the complete extinction of their species. Humanity had learned to be more efficient predators than the creatures that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. Every Devourer fleet base and individual ship had been systematically hunted down and destroyed by human forces equipped with increasingly powerful exotic matter weapons, but victory against the Devourers had only been the beginning. The galaxy was full of hostile civilizations that had heard about humanity's military capabilities and decided to test them. The Zephyrian Empire had attacked Earth's outer colonies 3 years ago. Their entire battle fleet had been reduced to fundamental particles within hours of engaging human forces. Commander Bayek Ji-woo led the Titan fleet, which specialized in rapid strike operations against enemy civilizations that threatened human expansion. Her ships could appear anywhere in the galaxy within days, eliminate entire enemy fleets, and retreat before local forces could respond. The fleet had destroyed 17 different hostile species over the past 5 years. The transformation of human civilization had been as dramatic as their military expansion. Earth was now the capital of an empire that stretched across nearly 200 star systems. Each world was heavily fortified and equipped with weapons that could sterilize entire sectors of space if threatened. Dr. Choi Yuna had become Earth's Minister of Exotic Warfare, overseeing the development of weapons that made the original Prometheus engines look primitive. Her latest creation could target enemy civilizations across multiple star systems, simultaneously collapsing their suns and planets into quantum singularities. The weapons were necessary because humanity faced constant threats from species that had ruled the galaxy for millions of years. The ancient Hegemon Collective controlled thousands of worlds and possessed technology that could manipulate matter at the atomic level, but even they had learned to avoid direct confrontation with human forces. Captain Lee Do-yun now commanded the Deep Space Monitoring Network that watched for new threats emerging from the galactic core. Long-range sensors detected civilizations with technology so advanced. It seemed like magic beings that could create and destroy stars at will and creatures that existed partially outside normal space-time. But humanity had adapted to become the galaxy's ultimate survivors. They no longer fought wars to defend their territory. Instead, they fought wars to prevent any other species from becoming powerful enough to threaten them. Human fleets would appear without warning, destroy entire civilizations, and leave behind only empty star systems. The moral implications of their actions were debated constantly in Earth's universities and philosophical societies. Humanity had become exactly what the Devourers had been, a force that consumed other civilizations to ensure their own survival. The only difference was that humans left some species alive if they posed no threat. Ambassador Ryu Soo-hyun represented humanity at the First Galactic Council, a gathering of the surviving civilizations that had banded together for mutual protection. The other species looked at her with a mixture of fear and respect, knowing that her government could eliminate them all if they chose to do so. The council meetings were tense affairs with dozens of alien species trying to negotiate boundaries and trade agreements while avoiding any action that might be interpreted as hostile by human observers. Humanity did not participate in the debates, they simply sat and listened while the other species decided how to divide up the territories that humans allowed them to keep. But the galaxy was not entirely under human control. New threats continued to emerge from the void between galaxies. Creatures that fed on entire star clusters and machines that converted whole sectors into raw materials for incomprehensible projects. The universe was vast and full of dangers that even humanity's weapons might not be able to stop. General Kim Hyun-woo now served as Earth's Minister of Galactic Defense, overseeing the construction of weapons and fortifications on a scale that spanned multiple galaxies. His latest project involved creating artificial black holes that could be used as both defensive barriers and offensive weapons, capable of destroying enemy fleets across interstellar distances. The human colonies had evolved into something resembling the ancient Spartan city-states, with entire populations dedicated to military service and technological development. Children learned to operate exotic matter weapons before they could properly read and civilian. Research was focused entirely on creating better ways to eliminate potential threats. President Park Jimin, the current leader of Earth's government, had been elected on a platform of controlled expansion and strategic patience. The human empire was already larger than any previous galactic civilization, but there were still unexplored regions where unknown threats might be developing in secret. The exploration fleets that ventured beyond the galaxy's edge reported discovering the ruins of civilizations so ancient that their technology was incomprehensible, structures that existed in multiple dimensions simultaneously, and artifacts that could manipulate the fundamental constants of physics. These discoveries suggested that humanity was not the first species to achieve GAL.